Now I come to the fourth Aryan truth, is that there is a path shown by the Buddha to this state of freedom from suffering, the state of Nibbana, and the Buddha called it the Aryan Eightfold Path. It's called the Aryan Eightfold Path because it consists of 8 factors, 8 things in the path that have to be cultivated. If we cultivate this Aryan Eightfold Path to a limited extent, then we become an Arya. If we perfect all the 8 factors of the Aryan Eightfold Path, we become an Arahant, completely liberated, completely enlightened. The first factor is right view, followed by right thoughts, and then right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now in one sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, it is stated that the Aryan Eightfold Path, must start with right view. You must have right view, otherwise you have not entered the path. First you have right view, and after cultivating right view, that leads you to right thoughts. And right thoughts will lead you to right speech, and right speech will lead you to right action, which will lead you to right livelihood, and then to right effort, and then to right mindfulness, and finally right concentration. So that is how the path has to be cultivated one by one. What's the meaning of right view? Right view means an understanding of the 4 Aryan truths. But there are different levels, of course. If you understand it on a shallower level, you attain the first stage of the Aryan path, a Sotapanna. If you understand it fully, then you become an Arahant, one fully enlightened. And it also implies an understanding of karma. But an understanding of karma by itself is not enough for you to become an Arya. You have to understand the 4 noble truths, 4 Aryan truths to a certain extent to become an Arya. Now how do we get right view? Before I come to that, there is a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.20.196 where it says that a person with right view understands the 4 noble truths. So as I said, if you understand on a shallower level the 4 noble truths, you have attained the first stage. So a person with right view is already an Arya. So that's why right view is very important. Now in the Majjhima Nikaya number 43, only 2 conditions are given by the Buddha for one to attain right view. What are these 2 conditions? One is listening to the Dhamma, and the other one is having Yoniso Manasikara, which is sometimes translated as proper attention, or thorough attention, or thorough consideration. So, when you listen to Dhamma, the Dhamma in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, Dhamma means the suttas. That's quite clear because in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, the Buddha said, if any monk says that such and such is the teachings of the Buddha, then without welcoming it, without scorning him or scorning his words, then you have to examine what he says to be the teachings of the Buddha with the suttas and the Vinaya. So from that sutta we know that Dhamma only refers to the suttas. Things like the Abhidhamma came later, much later. because if you listen to the early discourses of the Buddha, you find that the Buddha called his teachings Dhamma Vinaya, and the Buddha defined Dhamma as the suttas in Anguttara Nikaya. Whereas later they talk about Tipitaka and Tripitaka. That's found in the later books, including the Mahayana. But Tripitaka was never even mentioned once by the Buddha, or Tipitaka not even mentioned once by the Buddha in the suttas. He always called teachings the Dhamma Vinaya, and he said Dhamma Vinaya plus, and there were monks' monastic code. So you see, to attain right view, you must listen to the suttas or study the suttas, and then you have proper attention, then you attain right view. There is another important sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya 46.4.8, where the Buddha says that when one listens to Dhamma attentively, that means listen to the discourses of the Buddha attentively, the five hindrances exist not in him, and the seven bojjhanga become complete. The seven bojjhanga, the seven factors of enlightenment, become complete. And when you are listening to the suttas attentively, the five hindrances do not exist in you at that time. These are the conditions for Arya attainment. That means just listening to the suttas, you can become an Arya. And that is quite obvious in the suttas and the Vinaya. Many people listen to the suttas as we have them today in the Nikayas for the first time, even without meditation. They became Sotapanna, the Buddha said. They became Sotapanna. Another sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 55.1.5. The factors for stream entry, Sotapatti, Yangani, these things that will bring you stream entry or Sotapanna. First one is association with true men. That means true men are those who know the true Dhamma. The second one is hearing the true Dhamma. And hearing the true Dhamma refers to the early four Nikayas of the Buddha, because the earliest discourses of the Buddha, which are consistent without any contradictions, are found in the earliest four Nikayas, the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta and Anguttara Nikaya. So the first one is association with true men, the second one is hearing the true Dhamma, the third one is having yoniso manasikara, proper attention or thorough consideration, and the fourth one is practice of Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, that means living by Dhamma. You put the Dhamma that you learn into practice. Just these four things will bring you stream entry, association with true men, hearing the true Dhamma, having proper attention, and living according to Dhamma. Now this word Sotapanna is usually translated as stream enterer. But that is not the only translation. This word Sotapanna consists of two words, Sota and Apana. Sota can mean stream, but the common meaning of Sota is the ear, and Apana means entered. So this word Sotapanna is probably also translated as ear enterer. That means the Dhamma has entered the ear, has penetrated, that person has understood. And we find that is probably, as I was saying, that the other translation for Sotapanna is one whose ear has been penetrated. And the reason for this is that Buddha calls his disciples savakas. Savakas, listeners. All the Buddha's disciples are called savakas, hearers, listeners. And they all listen to the Dhamma. And in the Anguttara Nikaya 3.85 and 9.12, the Buddha compared the four stages of Aryahood with the three factors of training. The Aryan Eightfold path can also be said to consist of three things: Sila, Samadhi and Panya, moral conduct, concentration and wisdom. And in this sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 3.85, the Buddha said that the Sotapanna and Sakadagami have perfect Sila. The Anagamin has perfect Sila plus Samadhi, whereas the Arahant has perfect Sila, Samadhi and Panya. So you find that the Anagamin and the Arahant, both of them must have perfect Samadhi, perfect concentration. And perfect concentration in the suttas always is defined as the 4 jhanas or one-pointedness of mind. So in this sutta you find the Sotapanna and Sakadagami, they don't need the one-pointedness of mind. They don't need perfect concentration. And the difference between the Sotapanna and Sakadagamin is that the Sakadagamin has attenuated or has decreased greed, hatred and delusion. Now to decrease greed and hatred are actually part of the 5 hindrances. The first 2 factors of the 5 hindrances is sensual desire and ill will. And sensual desire and ill will is synonymous with greed and hatred. So for a person to decrease the 5 hindrances slightly, he needs concentration to a certain extent. Not perfect, because if it's perfect, for the Anagamin is completely eliminated. This sensual desire and ill will completely eliminated, whereas in the Sakadagami is reduced. So because of that, you find the Sakadagami, he needs to meditate, he needs a certain amount of concentration, whereas the Sotapanna, the greed, hatred and delusion has not been decreased. In the suttas, the characteristics of the Sotapanna is only given as unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, 3 things, and he has perfect virtue. So the Sotapanna only has unshakable faith into triple gems, and he has perfect virtue. But perfect virtue does not mean that it is so perfect that he does not have any faults, In the Anguttara Nikaya 3.9.85, it is said that even an Arya can have minor transgressions, Now, some people think that the Sotapanna is so high a stage that that person is so perfect, but it does not appear so in the suttas. In the Samyutta Nikaya 55.3.4, there was a man by the name, a Sakyan by the name of Sarakani. And when he passed away, people came and informed the Buddha and asked the Buddha, where has Sarakani taken rebirth? And then the Buddha said, don't worry about Sarakani, something like that. Said that Sarakani had already become a Sotapanna. And when some people heard about this, they got very angry, Why? Because they said that Sarakani failed in the training and took to drink. And according to the commentary, failed in the training means he could not succeed in the training of a monk. That means he disrobed. And then he took to drink. The fact that they got angry seems that he didn't take to drink in small quantities. He probably drank quite a lot. And yet the Buddha says that he was a Sotapanna. And then in another sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 14, a relation of the Buddha, I think a cousin of the Buddha called Mahanama, he came to see the Buddha and he told the Buddha that for a long time, even though for a long time he has learned the Dhamma and understood the Dhamma, and yet sometimes greed, hatred and delusion obsess him, control his mind, so that he has to act according to greed, hatred and delusion. So he asked the Buddha, is there something I have not cultivated? That's why I am still controlled by greed, hatred and delusion. Then the Buddha said, Mahanama, as long as Aryan disciple, even though he has attained something like, even though he has attained Aryan wisdom or something like that, yet if he has not cultivated piti and sukha, then he will still be led by sensual desires. Now piti and sukha is something that you get when you attain the jhanas. If you haven't attained the jhanas, one-pointedness of mind, you cannot get piti and sukha. So when a person has attained piti and sukha, then greed, hatred and delusion cannot control him anymore. But before that, it can control him. Now according to the commentary, Mahanama was already a Sakadagami, second stage Ariyan. And yet he is led by greed, hatred and delusion, sensual desires. So from these two suttas, you find that the lower stage Arya is still has certain weaknesses. That's why in the suttas we find that it is probable that the first stage, Sotapanna, is just attained by hearing the Dhamma, paying proper attention and understanding the suttas. That's why it is so important for us to study the suttas. That is the foundation. If we don't have the foundation, you find even you meditate for many long years, that you will give up, as has happened in Penang. There was somebody who was supposed to have meditated for 20 over years, and he gave up Buddhism in the end. Now, the second factor of the Aryan Eightfold path is right thoughts. And right thoughts means the opposite of the wrong thoughts of greed, ill will and harming, and it means the thoughts of renunciation or non-attachment, the first one, being able to let go. The second one is thoughts of goodwill, which is the opposite of ill will. And the third one is thoughts of harmlessness or meekness. Being meek is quite a blessing. It's mentioned in the Mangala Sutta and also in the Bible. So that is the right thoughts that we should have. If we have such right thoughts of non-attachment and goodwill and harmlessness, then we start to counteract the three poisons of greed, hatred and delusion. And right thoughts will lead to right speech. Why? Because before we speak, we must think. As stated in the Dhammapada, the first verse, mind is the forerunner of all states. So if we have right thoughts, it leads us to right speech. And right speech refers to four types of speech. The first one, abstention from lying. The second one, abstention from malicious tale bearing. Sometimes the second one is translated as slander, abstaining from slander. But slander, the actual meaning is that you hear somebody say something and then you go and repeat it to somebody else. You hear A talking bad about B, then you go and carry tales to B and then cause A and B to quarrel and fight. That's the meaning. And the third one is harsh words or coarse words. We avoid that, because when you speak harsh words, nobody can accept it. Even sometimes your intention may be good, you speak a bit louder and people get angry. Because all of us, we have that anger in us. It's like a jack in the box. You touch the jack in the box and it pops up. So somebody gives you a reason. We should avoid harsh words. And then the last one, we avoid unbeneficial talk or frivolous talk. And frivolous talk, according to the Dhamma, is talk about politics, talk about sports, talk about this and that. And beneficial talk is talk about wanting little, contentment, seclusion, sila, samadhi, panya, moral conduct, concentration and wisdom, etc. So right speech is these factors, abstaining from lying, from malicious tale-bearing, from harsh words and from frivolous talk. Also you can say right speech is that which is truthful, that which is timely, that which is beneficial, that which is gentle, and spoken with the mind of love, loving kindness. That is good speech. And then right speech will lead us to right bodily action. Right action. And right action means abstention from killing, using the body to kill, from stealing, from committing adultery. Committing adultery in the Nikayas, the Majjhima Nikaya, refers to having a sexual relationship with 4 classes of person. First one is to engage in sexual relationship with somebody's husband or somebody's wife. Second one is having a relationship with somebody who is already engaged, betrothed to somebody else, somebody's fiancé. You have a relationship with. Third one is the certain people who are too young under the guardianship of parents or brothers and sisters. The fourth one is somebody who is by convention is not allowed for you to engage in a sexual relationship. For example, the king's concubines, or a monk or a nun. These are the 4 classes of people. If you engage in sexual intercourse with them, that amounts to adultery. And then right action leads to right livelihood. And right livelihood means abstaining from the kind of livelihood that would do harm to others especially, or do harm to yourself. And 5 types of trades are specifically mentioned by the Buddha. The first one is trading in human beings, that means in slavery. That's the first type that is wrong. The second one is rearing animals to sell for their meat. For example, rearing chickens and pigs to sell to the market for slaughtering. That's the second type of wrong trade. The third type is trading in weapons, weapons that kill. Fourth one is trading in poisons or drugs or insecticides and all that that kill living beings. And the fifth one is trading in intoxicants, liquor or drugs, etc. These are the types of trading that should not be carried out by lay people. And then right livelihood leads to right effort. And right effort is defined as the first 4 types of things are involved. The first one is to discard unwholesome mind states that have arisen. Unwholesome or unskillful mind states that have arisen. The first one. The second one is to prevent unwholesome mind states that have not risen from arising. To prevent unwholesome mind states from arising. Third one is to develop unarisen wholesome mind states. And the fourth one is to promote wholesome mind states that have already arisen, to make it increase. Now what are unwholesome mind states? Unwholesome mind states are involved with greed or attachment, anger or ill will, delusion, conceit, aversion, jealousy, stinginess, shamelessness, restlessness, etc. These are unwholesome mind states. So if they have not arisen, we try to prevent them from arising. If they have already arisen, we try to discard or decrease them. And then wholesome mind states are are states connected with renunciation or unattachment, goodwill, mindfulness, humility, generosity, conscience, a sense of remorse, tranquility, etc. So these wholesome mind states, if they have not arisen, then we try to develop them, bring them up. Or if they have already arisen, then we try to promote them, make them increase these wholesome mind states. That is right effort. So right effort is concerned with watching your mind, to watch the mind and see these states. Why we have to watch the mind? Because where does our dukkha come from? Our suffering comes from the ego, from the sense of an I, a self. And where is the sense of an I or self? In the mind. The I or self arises every moment in the mind. Every time a consciousness arises, this I arises. When the consciousness ceases, there is no I. Consciousness arises, I arise again. So because the I is created there in the mind, that is why we have to watch the mind, to see that we have wholesome or skillful mind states, not unwholesome or unskillful mind states.